Okay, good morning everyone. I'll be presenting the results on the effect of dry matter content on the storability and eating quality of Bigbucks and Cripps Red. So New Zealand research has shown that consumers prefer food with a higher DMC and are willing to pay more and are more likely to repeat purchase food with a high DMC. And DMC is different to the established maturity and quality parameters such as firmness and sugars, as it accounts for starch that later metabolizes to soluble sugars during the ripening process. So the project motivation was to see if DMC could be correlated to storability, which would then help with optimizing storage conditions and also assisting with better decision making for storage, duration, and marketing. Our first objective was to see what factors influence DMC, such as the time of the sampling, the orchards, and the canopy position. And our second objective was to determine the relationship between DMC and storability. So for the first objective, we did a weekly sampling starting 5 weeks before until 2 weeks after from 12 orchards per cultivar, and we took from the top and the bottom of the canopy. So for the time of sampling, we saw some significant differences in the novas between different sampling dates within an orchard. With Bigbucks, with Cripps Red, we didn't see a lot, but despite some of these differences, there was no clear trend indicating that DMC increased or decreased during the pre- and post-harvest period, so it remains fairly constant within an orchard between sampling dates. If we look at the orchard factor, there was significant differences between the orchards. This is the results here for Bigbucks. So we can see that some orchards have higher DMC than other orchards. We found the same for Cripps Red and decided to do a cluster analysis, or like semi-low-key one. We put the high DMC orchards in a cluster and low DMC. You can see the classes there. And what we found is that orchards that had a higher DMC at harvest also had a higher firmness, lower starch breakdown, higher sugars, higher acids. And then looking at canopy position, we threw all the orchards together and then looked at the different sampling dates, and then we found that fruit from the upper canopy had a higher DMC, although not always significant, but these fruit also had a higher blush color and a lower starch breakdown and were generally also smaller fruit. So it's possible that top canopy fruit that receive more sunlight have a higher carbohydrate production and DMC accumulation, and could possibly also have a higher storage potential. So for the second objective, looking at DMC and storability, we harvested 120 fruit per orchard, and we stored them for the respective storage periods, and we did an evaluation after storage and after shelf life. For Bigbucks, we found that DMC at harvest correlated to firmness at harvest, as well as to firmness after shelf life and at the start and at the end of shelf life. For Cripps Red, we found that the DMC at harvest correlated to sugars at harvest, and then also to blush and sugars at the start and end of shelf life. You can see that the correlation between DMC and sugars at the start of shelf life for Cripps Red was quite high as well, 0.96. We also did a sensory analysis for the Cripps Red apples, which was at the 5 days after the start of shelf life, and we found that there was quite high correlations between DMC and the overall fresh flavor of fruit and the sweet taste of fruit, which supports the New Zealand research done. So overall, the conclusions that we found is that an orchard's harvest DMC could already be estimated a few weeks before commercial harvest. The DMC at harvest was an indication of fruit quality, especially for firmness and sugars. Fruit from the upper canopy have a higher DMC and have possibly a better storability. And then the harvest DMC was a good indication of sugar and sweet flavor after storage, specifically for Cripps Red. And there were also a few meaningful correlations between the harvest DMC and storage disorders for Bigbucks and Cripps Red. And then just the famous disclosure, this is one season's data for both of the cultivars. So further research needs to be done on it. Thank you.